Hey, it's SR Mowry here from Mistwood Publishing, coming with a video that was very unexpected. Sometimes you're thinking. I was thinking about stuff, and the idea to turn it into a video popped up maybe like 10 minutes ago, and so I thought I would do that. I know that the last video I made was very different than this video is going to be, and that maybe some people if they watched that video, might be surprised to see a video. And there will be updates on that as well, but the reason why I felt like I should make a video is because I was reminded of my why I started writing these books in the first place. And to kind of articulate what that is, because a why is very powerful, obviously, especially if it's something that drove you to write books, right? And so I was trying to watch this Fall of the House of Usher show, and I got about an episode. I finished the first episode and got about maybe 5-10 minutes into the second one, and I turned it off. And it reminded me of why I wanted to write my own books. And it's in part because I noticed a trend that started with kind of Game of Thrones, and it's very clear in the Fall of the House of Usher. There's almost like this weird celebration of nihilism. It's like it used to be that people were aware of their flaws and their sins, right? And they would seek to overcome them, right? Because the characters of movies were like Superman, Batman, they're flawed people, but they strive to a higher ideal. Whereas nowadays you have like the main characters are scumbags. And not only are they scumbags, but they're not ashamed of their evil. And when it's okay to have a villain that's that way, in fact it's almost necessary, but to have almost every character be this like pride, almost like pride in their evil, pride in their, it's almost like this weird pride in like hopelessness. It's a weird pride in nihilism, just like this overwhelming dreariness that everything's terrible and, I just am what I am. And I really, really don't like that. Again, it's okay if a villain is that way, because you almost need to have your villain be that way. But I think what I've found in a lot of stories, like Fall of the House of Usher and Game of Thrones, is that it's almost like it's celebrating nihilism. It's like, and I just don't like that. I do like horror films, and I do like a lot of different kinds of films, but for me, in order for me to enjoy a horror film especially, there needs to be some sort of battle between evil and good and evil, right? And the good has to actually be good. And there can't be, there needs to be a balance between the two. And that's not to say that there can't be a lot of darkness, because I think that's one reason why Lord of the Rings is so great, is because the odds seem so stacked against the characters that when the victory comes over evil, it's a testimony, right? So it's not really a testimony if somebody overcomes odds that are not significant. That's why I don't really find Marvel movies particularly compelling, because the heroes aren't taking the villain seriously. Why should I? The stakes don't really seem very high because they're goofing around. But you watch like Batman versus Superman, a movie that most people hate and I love, because you have characters who are flawed, but they don't celebrate their flaws. They're not proud of them. Even if, like Batman, for example, is indulging in some of his, unethical behavior, you can tell like he still has moral fiber. He's not apathetic about his nihil, like he's not apathetic about nihilism. You know what I mean? It's like characters in Fall the House of Usher are nihilists, but they're like proud of it. I don't. It's weird. I don't get it. But so Batman vs Superman was critiqued for being super gritty and dark, but I like that it seemed that way. That because whenever the evil is overcome, it makes the victory seem all the more beautiful, or Superman's sacrifice all the more beautiful. And that's not to say that you can't have an Empire Strikes Back, because I think Batman vs Superman is an Empire Strikes Back, where the villains win for at least part of the story, but you know in the next chapter that the heroes are going to win. And in order for that story to mean something, there has to be great darkness. So I'm not saying that you can't have villains that are really dark and that celebrate this kind of, they're like apathetic towards their nihilism, like they don't really care, that they're almost proud of being nihilistic. And you can have villains like that, but when you have most of the characters like that in Game of Thrones or Fall of the House of Usher, or really most anything that the guy that did Haunting of Hill House has done since Haunting of Hill House, the heroes aren't likable. Like, one reason why the Lord of the Rings means so much is the victory, because I want these characters to succeed because they're good people that I identify with and like. And I identify with them not with their negative characteristics, but with their, maybe some of their flaws, but they're not like celebrating their flaws. You know, there's a big difference. I just have a profound disgust with celebrating sin, right? And these characters, they're just so irredeemable to the point of, it's like, I don't want to see that. I don't want characters to be like that. I want characters to inspire hope, and I want good to triumph over evil. That has to exist in a movie for me to like it. Even like Macbeth, which is my favorite Shakespearean play. It's very dreary. It's very depressing. And the main character ends up being the bad guy. But good still triumphs over evil. And Macbeth is not, he's wrestling with his guilt the whole time. And that's identifiable. Like when Paul writes, I know what is evil, but I do it anyway. Like that's relatable. Macbeth is relatable because he has, full of scorpions is my mind. Like, he is this flawed person who's evil. But he's not celebrating it. He very clearly has a profound sense of guilt for killing the king, which is what drives him mad. It's a very complex thing. What I don't like is, hey, we're bad people and we're happy about it. We're proud of it. And by the way, everything's miserable and terrible. And life is just this dreary, hopeless longing of nothingness. And let's almost glorify that. And that's what a lot of modern stories do. So a big reason why I wanted to write my books is because I felt that fantasy and storytelling in general was heading in a direction that I didn't really like. And as time has passed, I've only been confirmed of that. Because when I started writing the books was way before, it was like just when Game of Thrones the show was starting to come out. And so I identified that a long time ago as I wanted to make a story like Lord of the Rings, but for more modern, maybe a little bit darker, grittier, but still having that, you care about the characters, you care about what happens. And the villains are compelling, they're evil, and you're like, how are they going to overcome these odds? It's not like a Marvel movie, but it's not like these current things like Fall of the House of Usher where you're like, why am I watching this? I don't like any of these people. They are all scumbags. And I feel dirty, I feel wrong watching it. And I get that a lot of people like that show, but for me, I don't like it. You know, I like horror films. I like the Freddy Krueger movies. I like the Halloween movies. And yeah, sometimes you are almost cheering for the villain, but if one of those movies were to end with Freddy or Jason or Michael winning, I wouldn't really like that. And I don't particularly like the ones where all of the characters are unlikable. There has to be some sort of clearly defined good, although imperfect, but there's a line, versus evil. And it's okay if your villains are gray, not black and white. It's okay if your heroes are gray, not black and white. But there needs to be not a celebration of their evil. So, like, why... What did I like about Game of Thrones? Most people liked it for the politics. I cannot stand... I can't rewatch the show. I cannot stand Littlefinger and Cersei. Like, I just cannot stand to watch them because it's so frustrating to me. I don't like the politics. I like Tyrion because he's a good guy. He's flawed, but he's a good guy. And he's trying to beat the bad people. But like when you have a lot of your heroes be just like hopelessly celebratory of their badness, and there's really no redeeming characters because you kill them all off. It's frustrating. So like what were the things I liked about it? Well, I liked Jon, I liked Ned, and I liked Robb. Basically, I liked all of the traditional hero archetypes. That's what I liked about the show. I liked the White Walkers. I thought that was a cool idea. Wish I thought of it, kind of a thing. That's why I wanted to see what happened with the Long Night. I couldn't care less who was king on the Game of Thrones. I couldn't care less about. Um, I mean, that doesn't mean that there weren't characters like Dany that were very, I thought, well written. Even how it ended made sense to me. But just generally, like the celebration of nihilism, I just don't like it. So in my books, I try to present something that is gritty and gritty to the modern sensibility, but still has that underlying, it's good versus evil. And I mean, I don't want to like, it's not a spoiler alert, but like good will triumph over evil. It has to. Those stories are the stories that stick with you. People are still going to be talking about Lord of the Rings a long time from now. I don't think they're going to be talking about A Song of Ice and Fire. At least not in a positive way. Not in the same way that they talk about Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is one of the best-selling books of all time. It's up there on the same list with the Bible. There's a reason for that. People, they want those stories. They want those stories that give you hope, that show that even when you're facing impossible odds, if you're good and you persevere, you can come out of it. And I know that in real life, that's not always the way that it works. I know that probably more than the average person does, through experience. But that doesn't mean that our stories have to be that way. Because really, what does that accomplish? What does a hopelessly, like a movie like Smile, where it's just hopelessly abysmal, depressing, the ending is just, you walk out of the theater like hating life. What good is that? What value does that add to society and culture? I much more like stories like Batman and Nightfall, where Bane breaks his back and he overcomes this great adversity and comes back stronger than ever. And you know, that's why I like Bane so much, is like, he is a formidable foe. He still has more honor than most of the characters in Fall of the House of Usher, though. You know, I just get tired of this glorification, this apathy, like you just don't care. I'm going to be who I am, and that's an absolute scumbag who treats everybody else like they're something to be used. I don't like that stuff. So my why has always been I felt that God was calling me to this, and a lot of that is to present an alternative that's not overtly Christian. That's never been my aim. My aim has never been to shove my faith down people's throats. My aim has been to be like a Switchfoot song. Everybody knows that they're Christian, but they're not officially labeled that, right? You can see, in some songs it's very obvious, but you can see that they are Christian, but they're not jamming it down your throat in most of their songs. So that's kind of always been my goal, and watching that episode in 10 minutes last night just kind of reminded me of, man, there is a need. There is a need for stories that are not this. And I'm not saying that my books are going to be famous and all of that. I'm just saying that I feel compelled, called to write it. What happens with the story in terms of popularity is not mine to really wrestle with. I just want to write it, even if it's just for me and my family and close friends to read. It just feels like something I need to do. And that's not to say that I don't enjoy it. I really do enjoy it, but I believe that God gives us interests for a reason. And that's not me saying that I have been perfect in that. I have written things that most certainly would not be pleasing to God. And I'm not saying that I have pursued this in the way that it should be pursued. But I am endeavoring to remedy that and to fix what can be fixed and to, moving forward, do things the right way. Now, admittedly, my books are still going to be pretty violent because that's what I like, and it's a realism. The reason why things are very graphic in my books is not to glorify violence necessarily, although sometimes it's fun writing descriptive things like that. But the ultimate point of it is to show the horror, right? If a character kills something that's not a monster, for example, it has a profound psychological effect on the character. It's not that Narbad and them are just mowing down enemies and laughing and joking like an Avengers movie. Like there's one I've seen in the second Age of Ultron where they're just snapping dudes' necks and they're telling jokes. That's not what my characters are going to do. If they're fighting sentient people that are not like Lord of the Rings orcs, where they're pure evil, that it has an effect on them. They're not just going to walk away with that without feeling some sort of guilt. There's no celebration of wrongdoing. So I'm not saying that those elements aren't going to still be there, but I think that moving forward there'll be more of an emphasis on just pursuing what the original purpose in writing them was. Now, in terms of what's the update on where things stand, in terms of what's the plan, because you're it sounds like you're wanting to still write these books, and we're well, that's true. In fact, in my other video I said I was still going to write them. It's just the publishing part that is not something that I enjoy. I really don't enjoy it, and that wasn't lying. And I still I'm not going to pursue publishing if it is a financial burden on my family. So what does all of that mean? What does that look like? What's the update? And so the update is basically from the last video, things still are very similar. I am still reevaluating a lot of things. I am still asking a lot of questions and wondering, like, how am I going to do these? Because I still want to write the books. And to be honest, I haven't written anything since the last video because, as I hinted at in the last video, this year has been extremely taxing. And I can't get into specifics, but I just have not been in a place where I can write. And it's just been maybe this last week where I've even really started thinking about it again. And so in terms of like publishing, that's still really far out in terms of where my headspace is. That doesn't mean I don't want to do it in the sense that I would love to be able to hold my book in my hands. But what does that, how do we get there is a question that I still have to figure out. But the difference between the last video is that at that point I wasn't really in a place to even consider that. And I wasn't even sure if I was going to really still write them. Because I wasn't sure where things were going to go. My life was in so much turmoil that I had no idea what the future was going to hold. So things have settled down quite a bit. Although life always offers new challenges and things like that. And it still doesn't change that I don't want to burden my family with this. I want to be selfless. I don't want to put myself before my family. I don't think that God would want me to burden my family financially. And whenever I do like campaigns, I get very stressed. And so I want to be emotionally available for my family as well. So nothing's definite, but Saga 2 is completely done. But in order for me to fulfill my promise of not burdening my family financially, although the book is ready, I am not financially ready to be able to take on that burden. You're like, well, you do a campaign, what's the difference? It pays for all of it. It does not. The campaign pays for a fraction of it. Now, moving forward with other books, are there things I was doing with Saga 2 to make it more expensive than it needed to be? Sure, definitely. And those are things that I will not be doing for future books. So, for example, there was a lot of emphasis on artwork of characters, and it's not really necessary. It's not needed. It's a novel. I mean, Lord of the Rings. You know, you have a cover, and that's really, you know, you have your map, which I do myself, and that's really all you need. I don't need a visual companion, which never really sold that well anyway. So, although I already have the Saga 2 visual companion complete, so I probably would sell that, since I mean I already have it all done. But all that to say, I had spent so much getting Saga 2 ready that I'm not really at a point where I can launch a campaign because I don't know how the campaign would go. And I don't want to be a financial burden on my family. There's still like formatting that would have to be paid for and printing that would have to be paid for, which one thing that I'm heavily considering is printing a lot less copies. The issue with that is that it makes each copy more expensive to print. So they're doing a tornado drill around here. But so there's a lot of things to consider, but the takeaway is that I do plan on releasing the books. It's just going to take a lot longer to do so. But the change is where previously I didn't really know what to do. I still feel convicted. I still feel called to write stories. And I have all these characters that I care so much about. I'm not going to just quit. But I want to pursue writing them and publishing them in a way that is not selfish, in a way that puts my family first and not my dreams. So, if you liked Saga 1 or you like my purpose enough to continue watching or to continue reading, then I would urge you to be patient, and hopefully, you can, hopefully that motivation to support something like this lasts long enough. Um, Hopefully. I mean, that's one thing I'm going to change is just before I would get so caught up on how many copies were being sold and how many were being read. And I think now I'm going to try to be very intentional to where that's not my goal. That's not where I place the value. I will place the value of the story in other things than its perceived success by me on how many people are actually reading it. I think that's where I got lost as I got caught up in, and it made me really insecure of how many people are actually reading this. And it's because I'm terrible at it. That's why nobody's reading it. It's because I'm really bad at it. Nobody cares. And I just get really down. And I think I've changed a lot over the last few months, and I think that, although I'm not there yet, I think that I can formulate a plan where I can make sure that that doesn't happen. And if I can do it, if I can do this journey without without damaging my mental health in that way and not risking my family's financial security, if I can find a way to do that, then there's no reason that the books, won't be published. The idea that comes to mind right now is basically what I was alluding to. Is like, yeah, well, so what if each copy costs a little more money? It just means, a little less profit in my pocket. But what will probably happen is you print less copies. Like when you do a campaign, you only print maybe 50 more than you sell with the campaign, and if you end up needing to sell more, then you order more. There's nothing that says you have to order all the books at once. You have to have a big stockpile, because I got like another 200 copies of The Veil of Stars, just sitting in my closet. There's no reason that says I have to do it that way. So by just being a little bit more smart with the money that is raised and taking my time to fund parts of the book so that it's not a burden on my family, I think that it's possible. I think that specifically with Saga 2, if you're wondering when, you might see that, because I already have the cover done. If you want to know what it looks like, I posted it on Mistwood's Instagram a little while ago. Since it's already done, it's legitimately just the financials. So as soon as I have my family in a financial situation where I feel that it wouldn't be a burden on my family, then I can pursue that. That being said, if you're feeling like donating, I'm always accepting donations. But my guess is it probably will be at least another year, if not a little bit more than that. I think I have formulated a plan where it would be relatively possible, at the absolute earliest, this upcoming summer, but maybe even the summer after that. The summer after that, definitely, I think I'll be in a place where it's possible. But again, that's all assuming that a campaign can generate enough money to you know, even do the printing costs. But again, it will be different because I'm only going to print, you know, a certain amount of copies instead of printing like 200, 300 copies like I did last time. Anyway, that's the update. That I just felt like making a video and kind of clearing my mind a little bit. Uh, that's where Mistwood is. That's where things are. Yeah. Hopefully, maybe there'll be another video soon, but that's all I got for right now. Peace out.